Chronicles of Narnia, The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis. Chapter 16, the last chapter. Farewell to Shadowlands. If one could run without getting tired, I don't think one would often want to do anything else, but there might be special reasons for stopping. And it was a special reason which made Eustace presently shout, "I say, steady, look what we're coming to!" And well he might, for they now saw before them Cauldron Pool, and beyond the pool the high unclimbable cliffs, and pouring down the cliffs thousands of tons of water every second, flashing like diamonds in some places, and dark grassy green in others. The great waterfall, and already thunder it was in their ears. "Don't stop! Further up and further in!" called Farsight, tilting his head a little upwards. "It's all very well for him," said Eustace, but Jewel also cried out, "Don't stop! Further up and further in! Take it in your stride!" His voice could only just be heard above the roar of the water, but the next moment everyone saw that he had plunged into the pool. The helter-skelter behind him, with a splash of water splash, all the others did the same. The water was not biting cold as all of them had an especially puzzle expected, but a delicious foamy coolness. They all found they were swimming straight for the waterfall itself. "This is absolutely crazy," said Eustace to Edmund. "I know, and yet," said Edmund. "Isn't it wonderful?" said Lucy. "Have you noticed one can't feel afraid even if one wants to? Try it." "By Jove, neither one can," said Eustace after he tried. Jewel reached for the foot of the waterfall first, but Trinian was only just behind him. Jewel was so fast she could see the whole thing better than the others. She saw something white moving steadily up the face of the waterfall. That white thing was the unicorn. You couldn't tell whether he was swimming or climbing, but he moved on higher and higher. The point of his horn divided the water just above his head, and it cascaded out in two rainbow-coloured streams all around his shoulders. Just behind him came King Trinian. He moved his legs in arms as if he was swimming, but he moved straight upwards, as if one could swim up the wall of a house. What looked funniest was the dogs. During their gallop they had not been out of breath, but now as they swam and wriggled upwards there was plenty of spluttering and sneezing among them. That was because they would keep on barking, and every time they barked they got their mouths and noses full of water. But before Jewel had the time to notice all these things fully, she was up the waterfall herself. It was the sort of thing that would have been quite impossible in her world. Even if you hadn't been drowned, you'd have even smashed to pieces by the terrible weight of water against the countless jags of rock. But in that world you could do it. You went up, 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 with all kinds of reflected lights flashing at you from the water, and all manner of coloured stones flashing through it, till it seemed as if you were climbing up the light itself, and always higher and higher, till the sense of height they would have terrified you if you could be terrified, but later it was only gloriously exciting. And then at last one came to the lovely, smooth green curve in which the water poured over the top, and that one was out on the level above the waterfall. The current was racing away behind you, but you were such a wonderful swimmer that you could make headway against it. Soon they were on the bank, dripping but happy. A long valley opened ahead, and great snow mountains, now much nearer, stood up against the sky. "Further up and further in!" cried Jewel, and instantly they were off again. They were out of Narnia now and up to the western wild, which neither Trinian nor Peter nor even the eagle had ever seen before. But the Lord Diggory and the Lady Polly had. "Do you remember? Do you remember?" they said, and then said it in steady voices too, without panting, for the whole party was now running faster than arrow flies. "What, Lord?" said Trinian. "Is it then true the stories tell that you two journeyed here on the very day the world was made?" "Yes," said Diggory, "and it seems to me as if it were only yesterday." "And on a flying horse?" asked Trinian. "Is that part true?" "Certainly," said Diggory, but the dogs barked, "Faster, faster!" So they all ran faster till it was more like flying than running. Even the eagle was going no faster than they, and they went through winding valley after winding valley, up the steep hills, and faster than ever down the other side, following the river and sometimes crossing it, and skimming across mountain lakes as if they were living speedboats, till at last the far end of the long lake, which looked blue as a turquoise, they saw a smooth green hill. Its sides were as steep as the sides of a pyramid, and round the very top it ran a green wall, and above the wall rose the branches of trees whose leaves looked like silver and their fruit like gold. "Further up and further in!" roared the unicorn, and no one held back. They charged straight to the foot of the hill, and then found themselves running up it almost as water from a broken wave runs up out of the point of some bay. Though the slope was nearly steep as the roof of a house, on the grass was smooth as bowling green, no one slipped. Only when they had reached the very top did they slow up, because they found themselves facing great golden gates, and for a moment none of them was bold enough to try if the gates could open. They all felt just like they had felt about the fruit. "Dare we? Is it right? Can it be meant for us?" But they were standing a great horn, wonderfully loud and sweet, ballooned from somewhere inside that that walled garden, and the gate swung open. Trinian stood holding his breath and wondering who would come out, and out came was the last thing he had expected, a little sleek, bright-eyed talking mouse with a red feather stuck in a circlet on his head, and its left paw resting on a long sword. It bowed, most beautiful bow, and lifted a shrill voice. "Welcome in the lion's name. Come further up and further in." Then Trinian saw King Peter and Edmund, and Queen Lucy rushed forward to kneel down and greet the mouse, and they all cried out, "Reap cheap!" And Trinian breathed fast with sheer wonder of it, for now he knew there was nothing looking at great heroes of Narnia, Reap-Cheap the mouse, who had fought at the great battle of Beruna, and afterwards sailed to the world's end with King Caspian the seafarer. But before he had time to think of this, he felt two strong arms thrown about him, and felt a bearded kiss on his cheeks, and heard a well-remembered voice saying, "What, lad, art thicker and taller since I last touched thee?" It was his own father, good King Irillion, but not as Trinian had seen him last when they brought him home pale and wounded from his fight with the giant, nor even as Trinian remembered him in his late years, when he was a grey-haired warrior. This was his father, young and merry, as he could just remember him every day when he had been a little boy playing games in the castle garden at Cherperville just before bedtime on summer evenings. The very smell of the bread and milk he used to have for supper came back to him. Joel thought to himself, "I will leave them to talk for a little, then I will go meet the good King Irillion. Many a bright apple he has given me when I was but a colt." But the next moment he had something else to think of, for out of the gateway there came a horse so mighty and noble that even a unicorn might feel shy in its presence, a great winged horse. It looked at the moment when Lord Diggory and Lady Polly cried out, "What, cousins?" They both shouted, "Fledge, good old Fledge," and rushed to kiss it. But by now the mouse was urging them to come in, so all of them passed through the golden gates into the delicious smell that blew out towards them out of the garden, into the cool mixture of sunlight and the shadow under the trees, working on springy turf that was dotted with white flowers. The very first thing that struck everyone was that the place was far larger than it had seemed from the outside. But no one had time to think about that, for people were coming up to meet the newcomers in every direction. Everyone you had heard of, if you knew the histories of these countries, seemed to be there. There was Guilford the Owl, Puddlecombe the Marshwiggle, King Rilian the Disenchanted, his mother the Star's daughter, and the great father Caspian himself. And close behind him were Lord Drinian and the Lord Vernon, Trumpkin the Dwarf, and Trufflehunt the Good Badger, and with Glenstorm the Senator, and 100 the heroes of Great War of Deliverance. And then came another time came Cor, King of Archland, with his loon, and his wife Queen Aravis, with his king father Loon and Queen Aravis, and the brave Prince Corin Thunderfist, his brother Breed the horse, and Hunan Mare. And then with a wonder beyond all wonders to Trinian, they came from further up the pass two good beavers, and Tomness the fawn, and there was greeting and kissing and handshaking, and all jokes revived. You've got no idea how good an old joke sounds when you take it out again after the rest of 500 or 600 years. And the whole company moved forward to the centre of the orchard, where the phoenix sat in a tree and looked down upon them all, and at the foot of that tree were two thrones, in whose thrones a king and queen were so great and beautiful that everyone bowed down before them. And well they might, for these two were King Frank and Queen Helen, from whom the most ancient kings in Narnia and Archenland are descended. And Trinian felt she would feel if you were brought before Adam and Eve in all their glory. About half an hour later, or it might have been 500 years later, for time there was not like here, Lucy stood with her dear friend, her oldest Narnian friend, Fawn Tumnus, looking down over the wall of that garden, and seeing all Narnia spread out below. But when you looked down, you found that the hill was much bigger than you had thought it, sank down between shining cliffs and thousands of feet below them, and trees that in lower world looked no bigger than grains of green salt. Then she turned inward again and stood with her back to the wall and looked at the garden. "I see," she said at last thoughtfully. "I see now. This garden is like the stable. It is far bigger inside than it was outside." "Of course, daughter of Eve," said the fawn. "The further up in and the further you go, the bigger everything gets. The inside is larger than the outside." Lucy looked hard at the garden and saw that it was not really a garden, but a whole world with its own rivers and woods and sea and mountains. But they were not strange. She knew them all. "I see," she said. "This is still Narnia, and more real and more beautiful than the Narnia down below, just as it was more real and more beautiful than Narnia outside the stable door." "I see. World within world, Narnia within Narnia." "Yes," said Mr. Tumnus, "like an onion, except as you go in, each circle is bigger than the last." And Lucy looked at it this way and felt that soon a new beautiful thing had happened to her. Whatever she looked at, how far it might be, once she fixed her eyes steadily on it, it became quite clear and close, as if she were looking through a telescope. She could see the whole southern desert beyond, the great city Tashbaan to eastward, where she could see Cherperville on the edge of the sea, and every window of the room that had once been her own, and far out into the sea she could discover the islands, islands after islands to the end of the world, and beyond the end, the huge mountain which they called Aslan's country. But now she saw that it was part of the great chain of mountains which ring around the whole world. In front of her it seemed to be quite close. Then she looked to her left and saw that she took to be a great bank of brightly coloured cloud, cut off from them by a gap. But she looked harder, and she saw that not a cloud, but a real land. And then she fixed her eyes on one particular spot of it, and she at once cried out, "Peter, Edmund, come and look, come quickly!" And they came and looked, for their eyes were also become like hers. "Why," exclaimed Peter, "it's England! And that's the house itself, Professor Kirk's old home in the country where all our adventures began." "I thought that house has been destroyed," said Edmund. "So it was," said the Faun, "but you are now looking at the England within England, the real England just as this is the real Narnia, and that inner England is no good thing is destroyed." Suddenly they shifted their eyes to another spot, and then Peter and Edmund and Lucy got with them and shouted and began waving, for there they saw their own father and mother, waving back at them across the great deep valley. It was like when you see people waving at you from the deck of a big ship when you're waiting at the quay to meet them. "How can we get at them?" said Lucy. "That is easy," said Mr. Tumnus. "That country and this country are all the real countries. They are only spurs jutting up from the great mountains of Aslan. We only want to walk along the ridge, upward and inward till it joins in. And listen! There's King Frank's horn. We must all go up." And soon they found themselves all walking together, and a great bright procession it was, upwards the mountains and higher than you could see in this world, even if they were to be seen. There was no snow on those mountains. There were forests and green slopes and sweet orchards and flashing waterfalls, one above another, going up forever. And in the land they were walking on grew narrower all the time, with a deep valley on each side. Across the valley in the land which was the real England grew nearer and nearer. The light ahead was growing stronger. Lucy saw a great series of many-coloured cliffs led up in front of them like a giant staircase. And then she forgot everything else, because Aslan himself was coming, leaping down from cliff to cliff, like a living cataract of power and beauty. It was Puzzle the donkey. You never saw. At the very first person whom Aslan called to him was Puzzle the donkey. You never saw a donkey look feebler and sillier than Puzzle did as he walked up to Aslan, and he looked beside Aslan small as a kitten looks beside a Saint Bernard. The lion bowed down his head and whispered something to Puzzle, which his long ears went down, but then he said something else, at which the ears perked up again. The humans couldn't hear what he had said either time. Then Aslan turned to them and said, "You do not yet look so happy as I mean you to be." And Lucy said, "We're so afraid of being sent away, Aslan. You've sent us back into our own world so often." "No fear of that," said Aslan. "Have you not guessed?" Their spirits leaped and a wild hope rose within them. "There was a real railway accident," said Aslan softly. "Your father and mother and all of you are, as you used to call it in the Shadowlands, dead. The term is over, the holidays have begun, the dreams ended. This is the morning." And as he spoke, he no longer looked at them like a lion, but things began to happen that after were so great and beautiful that I cannot write them. And for us, this is the end of all the stories. We can most truly say that they all lived happily ever after, but for them it was only the beginning of the real story. All their life in this world and all their adventures in Narnia had only been the cover of the title page. Now they are beginning chapter 1 of the great story which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, in which every chapter is better than the one before. Alright everyone, that was the Chronicles of Narnia, The Last Battle. If you guys enjoyed it, then please tell me. If you guys want more books like this is the whole series, so I don't know what other books there are, but if you enjoyed it, then please tell me and please advise which books you might want to read. My holiday is coming up soon, so I might be able to release some more books. I will see what I can do for you guys. Till next time, bye!